From crying on her kitchen floor to debuting on Saturday Night Live, Trisha Paytas has had one of the most fascinating careers in all of entertainment, with 35 television show appearances ranging from My Strange Addiction, Dr. Phil, Ellen, A Thousand Ways to Die, America's Got Talent, and even an episode of Modern Family. Not to mention the dozens of self-funded, self-produced music videos, 33 singles, 8 EPs, and 1 studio album, 8 movie cameos, and 11 published books. Oh, and we haven't even gotten to YouTube yet. Mukbangs, ASMR, characters, sketch comedy, beauty tutorials, challenges, $30,000 shopping sprees, story times as a stripper. Did I forget to mention that she started as an escort before all of this? And this doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, with arguably more internet feuds than anyone alive, from Frenemies, Vlog Squad, Gabby Hanna, Shane Dawson, Charlie D'Amelio. Trisha Paytas has become this immortal figure of the internet. And every time it feels like things have completely blown up in smoke for her career, she somehow comes back even bigger than she was before. So how the hell does this happen? Where did Trisha Paytas even come from? How did she get her start? And how has she maintained this career for nearly 20 years when we have seen some of the biggest people on the internet rise and fall? Well, that is exactly the question we set out to solve here today. In this week's episode, we will analyze the evolution of Trisha Paytas and her career. And I have created over a 10-page research document to show the 60-plus career paths and decisions that got her to where she is today. Because frankly, this feels like an autobiography at this point. Welcome back to Nicky at Night. I am your host, Nicky Reardon, and I could not be more excited to talk to y'all about Trisha Paytas today. I don't know why I had this idea for this episode. I guess just seeing her on SNL was so crazy to me. And I guess, you could really make the argument that she is like the longest running active YouTuber. Like, she started her channel in 2007. I mean, that's even before YouTube was like a monetized platform, I believe, and is still actively posting on it on a weekly basis. Like, there are many other people who have come and made their way in and out in that era, yet Trisha Paytas has kept it going. And I think it was just such a fascinating thing to me too, because she's done so much, like arguably too many things. And I've never seen anybody like try and put it all into like one cohesive list with a timeline. So I thought it'd be so fun to try and do that. I don't know. It's just so fascinating to me. I always get fascinated with these people who, start these careers from the internet and how it's never the same path for anybody. And then where they go and try and take it from there is something eternally fascinating to me. So please make sure you hit the subscribe button, and hey, follow us on Spotify, follow us on Apple Music, listen to us at the gym, on your car ride home from work. There is more Nicky at Night waiting for you. And if you're listening there right now, hey, give us a 5-star rating. Check if you haven't yet. 10 seconds of your day has the potential to completely change my life. So with that, let's dive into Trisha Paytas. And big caveat, okay? Trisha Paytas is very problematic. And I am not going to try to defend her. I'm not. But we all have a problematic fave, okay? One person who we just know is problematic, and at the end of the day, we accept that, and we're not going to try to defend it, but we cannot deny their entertainment value. For some people, that's Wendy Williams. For me, it's Trisha Paytas. Like, I'm not going to sit here and defend any of the things she's done. They're awful, and we'll definitely get into that, trust me. But she is so fascinating because she's just one of those like personas of the internet that you love to hate and you hate to love. Like, everything she does feels like looking into this snow globe of almost like, how can you believe that that is a real person? And it begs this argument that like no one really knows who the real Trisha Paytas is. There are so many lies and scandals and personas she has taken on the internet, things she's said she was interested in, then completely shifted career paths that like you really at her core arguably don't know who this person is. But that also kind of works out in her favor. It has time and time again allowed like anything to be a joke. You know what I mean? Even if it wasn't a joke, or if it was mildly serious, whatever, like you can always write it off as like, oh, like I was just trolling, ha ha ha, which is a very interesting thing. And I would say that Trisha Paytas is this like chameleon of the internet in such a fascinating way. Like, when you really go and dive into this, you see how like she's kind of this like symbol of like what is popular at the time. Like if you ever want to like know what was popular in June of 2016 on YouTube, just scroll through Trisha Paytas' YouTube videos until June of 2016, and like whatever she's doing was the most popular thing. It's not like she's always had this like one specific craft. It is this ability to blend in, to do to be this chameleon, to transform. And that is interesting. It's very the opposite of the way you think of anybody else's career, I would argue. And that is really what made me, just, again, like eternally fascinated in how this has worked. So getting into her early life, Trisha Paytas was born in 1988, making her 36 years old today. She was born in California, but she moved to Pecatonica, Illinois at 3 years old. However, she moved back to Los Angeles in 2006 at 18 years old. She had originally moved in pursuit of an acting career, but as we very quickly found out, the acting thing was not going to work for her. Her goal was always to be famous. She does not have a specific craft or talent, just to be famous. And she did not care what she was famous for, whether that was trying to break a Guinness World Record, being an extra background character in TV shows, trying to put out music, trying to put out books. Like, she has changed what she has done, even on YouTube, right? From sketch comedy to mukbangs to story times to ASMR. Like, she does not have a specific passion, just a desire for attention, which is so interesting. To quote Trisha in an interview from Insider, "I never cared about being rich or anything. Still don't. I just have this constant need for attention. Maybe it's a bad thing, maybe not, but that's just how I thrive." And I think that is so funny. And like, she is arguably this physical manifestation of the quote, being Delulu is the Salulu, why is it okay and people love Trisha for not caring about any sort of art form and only wanting fame, but nobody else, she's so shameless about it. And I think maybe that the self-awareness is a key factor. Like, whether you love or you hate her, you cannot deny she has tried to do this for nearly 2 decades in a way that any human being could ever possibly imagine. And she has been, again, doing this constantly, so it kind of makes it campy, right? You will never find anyone who is as passionate about a topic as Trisha Paytas. She doesn't just like High School Musical. She's going to dress up as Troy Bolton, drive to Albuquerque, New Mexico to find that golf course, and self-produce an entire music video, just because it's that hyperfixation of the week. It is such a deep-rooted delusion that it's arguably beautiful in a weird way. Or she's not just gonna, like Ariana Grande because of the Wicked movie. She's going to buy every single perfume that was ever there. And it's so fascinating. Again, why does people always get, shit on, I think, in the public eye for wanting to be famous or doing these things using it Addison Rae calling the paparazzi on herself or whatever. And people hate on it, but if Trisha Paytas does it, it's iconic. There's a weird thing about it. And maybe it's because she's again, it's the self-awareness. She's not trying to be some super famous singer or whatever. And the fact that she would never deny that, it makes it kind of camp. It makes it self-aware. It makes it funny. It's a bit that everybody's kind of in on. So what do you do when you have zero talent and you want to be famous in the 2000s? Reality TV, which is when Trisha Paytas goes on 35 reality TV shows. She started with My Strange Addiction, where she said her addiction was tanning, just getting tan over and over again, doing self-tan or doing the tanning bed. She later on, I think on Front of Me, said that this was absolutely a lie. She just couldn't really think of anything and just wanted to get on the show. So she just got a really, really deep tan and went on and said that it's because she had gotten 50 tans or whatever. And it worked. Trisha Paytas' first ever viral YouTube video was for trying to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the fastest talker. However, she failed, but this video still got 8 million views. So this gets her onto America's Got Talent and Ellen. She tries again in another YouTube video, fails again, but it got 5 million views. And this is over 14 years ago. So again, she might be arguably the most active and longest running YouTuber still making videos to this day. But she went on a lot more random reality TV shows than you could ever count. The Price is Right, Conan, Who Wants to Date a Comedian, The Millionaire Matchmaker, 1,000 Ways to Die, Tosh.0, Dr. Phil, Ridiculousness, Celebrity Name Game, Big Brother. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I think that's what makes it funny. It is this, Trisha Paytas in a nutshell, as we'll talk on later, is this obscene amount of effort for very little payoff. I think is also another thing that always makes it funny and kind of campy. You know what I mean? But did you know that Trisha Paytas is in a music video for Amy Winehouse? She was an extra. in the Tears Dry on Their Own music video. And then later on, she even made a YouTube video about this, talking about how to secretly get in music videos, where she talks about how she, I guess, got on set with Amy Winehouse, which is insane. And I'm pretty sure that she is supposed to play a stripper in this music video, which is iconic and very telling of her life at that time. Also, she was in the We Made You music video by Eminem, as well as the Beekeeper's Daughter music video by All American Rejects. Like, she is a relic of the internet in like this most insane way, which brings us to her YouTube era. She started her channel in 2007, and it was originally a fan account for Quentin Tarantino. After her first viral video, she did a wide variety of things. Some beauty tutorials, hauls, skits. Some personal favorites of mine during this era were, number one, me sleeping. A 1 minute and 30-second video of her pretending to be asleep, but she's holding the camera up like this, so we know she's not actually sleeping. And this video has like 400,000 views. Another favorite of this era is how to survive a horror movie if you're blonde with big boobs. Or another cult classic like Shake My Ass, a 16-second video of her just shaking ass. Trisha Paytas is also arguably one of, if not the first ever, like, big plus-size creator, which I do think is very fascinating. Like, again, in this very, young era of the internet, you think of, like, 2008 to 2012, she was really, like, one of the only people at this time, I would argue, that was, like, making these, like, very, classic, like, haul-style content, but as a plus-size woman. So, hey, credit where it's due. She's done a lot of awful things later on, as we're about to drive into. Trust me, there's an entire section for that. Another iconic moment of her lore on YouTube is the crying on the floor videos. So what was the first ever crying on the kitchen floor video from Trisha Paytas? It dates back to 2016 when she dated this performer, Sean Vanderwilt. Her breakup video was titled He Cheated, I'm Done, where she sat on her kitchen floor crying to the camera without any edits, which I think is a very iconic thing of Trisha Paytas too, of like, she's been on the internet for nearly 20 years and like has not edited a video ever. Which is so funny. She then follows this up with another video called Sean Vanderwilt is Gay. Talking about how she thought her ex-boyfriend was gay, which is so funny to me because either, one, she's just outing him like against his will, which is really messed up, or she is just lying, which is also really messed up. Again, Trisha Paytas, my problematic fave, I'm not going to defend it. I'm just here for the entertainment value. Okay. I hope that man's okay with peace and love. And some, great Trish gems also. She, in one video, said that she was teasing that she got engaged. And then in the next video, it's her hosting a wedding ceremony for a cardboard cutout with her and Brad Pitt. Like, the amount of things this girl has done on the internet is truly insane. It's delusion. It's like delusion working out in its most grandiose form, which is why I think I'm so captivated by it. Because Trisha Paytas perfectly encapsulates this art form of internet virality. There is zero nuance to everything she does. Every single thing has to be extreme. She's not just gonna like High School Musical. She's going to dress up as Troy Bolton and drive to New Mexico to film the video. She's going to pay $100,000 to produce that video. She's not just gonna eat food, but she's going to order one pizza from every single pizza place and eat all of them. Or not. She's not just gonna do a haul. It's gonna be like a $10,000 haul from Forever 21. When all the YouTubers were getting G-Wagons, she got a custom pink interior, pink exterior G-Wagon. And everything she does is done publicly, whether that was crying on her kitchen floor over a breakup or doing an Anaconda music video dance routine. You kind of never know when everything and anything is going to completely explode. And watching her felt like this ticking time bomb, which I would argue is like one of the most interesting things about her. Again, like you don't really even know where it's going to go because I would argue she herself doesn't know where it's going to go. And she's really always used this public outrage around that factor to get attention. In many ways, Trisha Paytas is a troll. And I think we'll talk about this again more later on, especially when we get into the frenemy section of this, as to, in some ways, I, with the utmost peace and love, like, wonder if she's just uneducated. But then also in some ways, I think she's doing it on purpose, or it's a little bit self-aware, or like even if she knows that she says something a little funny and ridiculous, she will intentionally like lean into it. Also, I think, again, talking about how just none of her videos are edited at all, I think makes it feel satirical and unserious in some way. You know what I mean? It's almost of this like, there's this internalized idea of like, I'm not trying in hard in this thing, so like you also maybe shouldn't take it fully that seriously. Again, talking about how she's just this chameleon of the internet, like constantly evolving to what's popular. She doesn't have a thing she was really known for, just known for always doing the popular thing until 2016. I would really argue the first thing that she really like patented as her thing was mukbangs. Obviously, mukbangs are a Korean concept, but when they really started popping off in America and like on YouTube during 2016, I think Trisha Paytas is the first name that people, you know, think of mind. This was also the peak of her viewership, truly. Like if you go back and scroll through her YouTube videos, it was like one of the only times where she was consistently averaging like millions upon millions of views. Also her longest era, which brings us for 2 years until 2018 when she starts dating Jason Nash. And this is where shit gets crazy because he is also fucking crazy. So, you know, like that's something we're going to talk about later on, like this Vlog Squad and Into Frenemies saga. But before that, I think it's important to talk about and address the controversies she's had because there is many of them. Also, I truly think it would be impossible for any one person to document every single thing Trisha Paytas has ever done, both in terms of positive and negative. Also, I would like to mention, when I was doing research for this video, apparently she's deleted like 1,400 videos from her channels over the years. So if there's something that I don't miss, or don't talk about, there's a chance it's been lost to the void. Like, I don't know. I did what I could, okay? So starting with the controversy, Trisha Paytas has always been controversial. I mean, like in the beginning, there was like these sketch comedies and just, you know, like racism or like racist remarks that she was doing all the time. Also just like talking about this glorification of very harmful surgeries like liposuction, and multiple health professionals with YouTube channels have even just like watched her content and really talked about how clearly she is going through these cycles of like binging and fasting or purging and whatnot. You know, like she would make a 10,000 calories in a day video, ordering all of this food, but then a few days or a week later talk about doing a water diet. And also, she just lies. Like with peace and love, she just lies. There is like, you know, one where she talked about she's had nothing but water for 5 days, which I'm pretty sure is like not even physically possible. And this is very bad content for people with, you know, an eating disorder to watch. The language is bad, you know, even in like just what she says, you know, this is what I've eaten to lose 8 pounds in 5 days. Like either that's not true or it's just extremely unhealthy to the point where like nobody's weight should be fluctuating that much that quickly. And even in her story times, you know, when she was talking about being an escort back in the days, like this is what she was in the beginning from her, when she moved to Los Angeles as an 18-year-old, you know, she was escorting. Also, I think there's just a lot of dangerous situations that she put herself in. And, you know, it is the nature of sex work in that way, but she does glorify it or play it off a little bit. And also, I think a very interesting thing to talk about is that all fucking Storytime YouTubers are liars, okay? All of them are liars. Do not believe Storytime YouTubers. Oh my God. Like, especially when in that era of the Storytime YouTube, like, they all just lied. You exaggerate for views. It's so clear how much they would lie. And essentially, like, even some of them have come out and later on and mentioned that some of these stories were lies. And also, she's had a lot of public struggles with drug addiction. Like, when you go back and watch some of these videos, there are some where it's very clear that she was on drugs, I think. Like, there was this one I was talking about. Literally, it's titled, I'm a chicken nugget. And people thought she was trolling and, like, what she's talking about in the video. But, like, if you watch it, like, it's kind of like, I think she's strung out and needed help. And this is something she's talking about again later on. And I think that she's past that point of her life. And I'm also not trying to say that excuses any of this behavior. It's not. It's unacceptable. But, you know, like, that is an interesting thing. Also, I think something that we'll talk about later on is this, like, you know, the girl who cried wolf effect. Like, when somebody has done something bad, people love to publicly shit on them, but that doesn't mean that, like, they are completely immune from having bad things happen to them. You know, like, if somebody is clearly, like, going through a substance abuse problem, like, it's not okay and excusable to then start laughing about it. You know what I mean? But I think that's something that has really happened. Also talking about this like mental health debate. And I'll talk about this a lot more in the Frenemy section because I think it really was at its peak in Frenemies. But she constantly like self-diagnoses herself with these very like serious mental illnesses and then tries to make it like a bit for content. You know, there was this one where she did a video saying that she had dissociative identity disorder. Coincidentally, right after Anthony Padilla releases a very successful video interviewing a lot of people with split personality, which is what DID is. And then she makes one, you know, talking about how she has all these different personalities, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, suddenly in 2024, you've never heard her talk about that once, right? And I do genuinely think, you know, that there are some things that she's talked about over the year that like she's probably actually diagnosed with, like one of the big ones being BPD, bipolar disorder, another one talking about schizophrenia. And like you can see a lot of the symptoms, you know, where she has this tendency to do things only in their most extreme form, how she's very quickly to, you know, like blow up or have these very big self-destructive tendencies, blah, blah, blah. And also, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not qualified to talk about any of this. But, you know, it's just when she has done it herself, it's interesting. And also, like, you have to take it with a grain of salt. And then she'll even, like, randomly talk about things like this. Like, you know, a lot of people with autism are talking about that on TikTok, like, this year and last year, just their experiences and how they handle different social interactions. And, you know, she's making a video talking about how she's autistic and always thought she was autistic and blah, 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 blah. There's also one of the many big ones, but a big one I remember was when she said that she was trans. I essentially just talked about how she had always felt that she was trans and that she was a trans man, but was doing drag to be a woman. Like, it was just ridiculous. It's literally like, it's sadly commodifying that for viewership. That's what it is. And it's very offensive. It's offensive to all of these people. It's offensive to any of the, you know, like trans community who don't get to have that choice and, you know, have the lowest life expectancy of any demographic in the United States. Like, you know, it's not a fun thing that they want to do as a bit for a YouTube video. It's not a fun thing for her to do in any of these skits that were extremely racially insensitive, that, you know, she's doing it for comedy and views on a YouTube channel. Like, none of this is okay. And also something we'll talk about a lot with Trisha Paytas later on is, I think, hiding behind this wall of mental illness to justify bad decision making, or this wall of substance abuse to justify bad decision making. And also, I think that is not a phenomenon unique to her. I have known many people in my life who, you know, do genuinely have like something wrong with them, or are really, you know, struggling mentally with something, and have been diagnosed with something very serious, but then use that as this excuse to be a bad person. And that's completely unacceptable, and something I'll talk about a lot again later on. So this also begs the question of this endless debate, I think, about Trisha Paytas about whether what she posts on the internet is real or satire. And honestly, I think it's a mix of both. Like, there are some examples where you can really clearly tell. Like, doing this research, there's this one video, you know, in 2012 she talked about where she was like endorsing Mitt Romney over Obama. And like, it's clearly a joke. Like, I don't think she meant this at all. I think she was doing it as rage bait. But then she'll have these like random one-liners, you know, where like there's this one video where she's like, yeah, you know, like that leader of China, Kim Jong-un. And I'm like, I think there's a chance she might genuinely believe Kim Jong-un is the leader of China. It's just like ridiculous and insane. Or the classic, iconic, we don't need gravity from Frenemy. It's like, which lives in my mind rent-free. I could talk about that episode for until the end of time.
We just also say we don't actually need gravity. But that's a different thing. Like,
what do you mean by that?
I saw someone do this. Was this a TikTok? We were watching something where someone's like, we don't actually need gravity. We were watching this movie. Like, we actually don't need it.
What do you mean that we don't need gravity?
What if it was never invented?
Invented by who?
Sir Isaac Newton.
And is it called Rare Beauty because Selena Gomez has that rare disease? Like,
I wonder if Selena Gomez named Rare Beauty because she has that rare disease.
There are some moments where I'm like, I'm not sure if she genuinely means it or not. I literally cannot tell you. It's insane. But I think that's also like, again, like talking about this like snow globe factor, why people hate to love her and love to hate her. Like, you're almost also trying to decipher what she is doing and what she says. And I think that she kind of built her platform off of being hated in this way, you know? And it is fascinating that I think if anyone else did the things that she has done, they would have been canceled years ago. And there's this interesting phenomena that happens on the internet of almost like canceled too many times to get canceled. I think the biggest perpetrator of this I always think of is Logan Paul. You know, like whenever he does something, no matter how many times he has blatantly scammed his audience with crypto, you know, people have sued him over Prime drinks. His distributor has sued him over Prime drinks. Nothing will ever be as bad as when he made that one video of like filming the person who had committed suicide in the woods in Japan. It's interesting that when there is a worse frame of reference to something, it always makes it look like what you're doing is not that bad. And it's a really interesting thing. I also think with these people who have been on the internet for so long, like Logan Paul or Trisha Paytas, like there's this certain aspect of, you know, they're a bad person, but if you're watching them, you have decided not to care. Again, I always talk about this. A classic example is like Kanye West. Like it has not been a secret to anybody that Kanye West is a terrible person, but he had this massive music audience for years and years and years. And like now, you know, really with this like deep rooted anti-Semitism that he's talked about, or when he did the like White Lives Matter stunt and brought out Candace Owens and blah, blah, blah. Like that was really the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people. But again, like he's been saying some really terrible things for years and years and years, doing terrible things for years and years and years. But if you were a Kanye fan, like in order to enjoy his music, you had to know that and accept that in some capacity. And I feel the same way about Logan Paul. I feel the same way about like a Trisha Paytas. You know, like you're just going into it with this mindset of like, yeah, they're not a good person, but like in some way they entertain me, and I'm choosing to, you know, enjoy that entertainment value while not agreeing with their stances on XYZ issue. So after, again, talking about the controversies, now we get into Jason Nash and the Vlog Squad, which was a really fascinating thing of the internet, because I think David Dobrik is like a nasty and evil person, like genuinely evil and vicious. And I don't say that about many people, because I think a lot of people do wrong things but don't have malicious intentions. I think David Dobrik always had malicious intentions. Like when he knew that there was 3 freshly turned 18-year-old girls getting sexually assaulted by his friend, and he records it and films it, then later, years later, posts a podcast episode talking about how funny it was and how it was such a good bit, blah, 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 or just all of the people who have been in his vlogs over years and years and talked about the way that he has manipulated them by filming these things of them. And I honestly think that he has this like weird aspect of voyeurism about him, where he likes to and gets himself some form of gratification in some way off of like recording people in these compromising situations to have this like hold and manipulation over them. And, you know, it's interesting that he would always record all these other people doing it, but he would never do it himself, you know? And it's like truly the way David Dobrik function is the way that a cult functions. There is a leader who imposes all these rules on the rest of the group. All these other people have to effectively do whatever the leader says, worship the leader for that attention that they are giving them. It's just scary. It was a very terrifying time of the internet. It blows my mind that he still has a platform and a career. But Trisha Paytas witnessed a lot of this stuff happening. She dated Jason Nash for like 2 years, and they were like on and off, but I think maybe even longer than 2 years. Like she really saw a lot of this stuff, from like Jason hitting on Tana when she was freshly turned 18 and like walking into her dressing room while she was changing and trying to kiss her when there's like a 30-year age gap, to again the entire Dirty Dom situation with sexual assault. Like she was literally there that night and I told them like again and like, what you're doing is wrong, this is disgusting, blah, 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 blah. Tried to stop them and then literally was like forced to leave, I believe. And I think what's so fascinating about this whole Vlog situation with Trisha Paytas is it was this girl who cried wolf effect. Because Trisha Paytas had been so problematic for so long, nobody believed her when she said any of these things, because there was this default of like, oh, well, Trisha's crazy, or well, Trisha's not a good person. And what's so sad is like years later, all of these things came out as being true. And she was kind of very like, yeah, I've been trying to fucking tell you all for years, but nobody listened to me. That's just a really interesting thing. Again, like I talked about this. One of the videos I want to make is this idea I've had about this, like the death of nuance on the internet. You know, like you are either good or bad. And if you're good, we believe you. And if you're bad, we hate everything about you. And there's no in between, you know, like you can't see a bad person could be telling the truth in the situation, or somebody who you perceive as a good person, David Dobrik, is doing a bad thing and deliberately doing the bad thing. Like there is no nuance. You are either in the good view of the public eye or in the bad eye of the public eye. And, you know, there is no in between. And that is a really scary thing about the internet constantly and perpetually. And I hope that this was a little bit of a wake up call for some of these people, especially as a lot of these things came out. And especially, again, these people from David's inner circle at the time, like Jeff Wittick, you know, like coming out and being like, no, like what he was doing is insane and was predatory and blah, 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 blah. Like, it was, you know, an interesting thing. And again, it's this girl who cried wolf effect. Like when she had complained and done these things so many times, people just assumed she was crazy by default. Which also brings us to frenemies. And frenemies was a monumental moment in internet culture. Like the day Jeff Wittick called into frenemies, well, that it tilted the axis my world spins on. It tilted the that was investigative journalism at its finest. I'm sorry, it was. And like, it was just so funny. The dynamic of these two, I think, is truly like unmatched. Because what made frenemies so funny is it's for the first time, I think we saw somebody actively try to like dive into the psyche of Trisha Paytas. And I do genuinely think that Ethan Klein humanized her in a lot of ways. And he genuinely tried to like be empathetic and understand the things that she was saying and like gently provide her with, a contrasting opinion or whatever. And it made her also just like have to explain these things that she said, which was very interesting. And we got some iconic moments out of it, right? Like, we don't need gravity. Oh my God. Like, I think about it all the time. Words cannot describe how many times I've rewatched that specific episode of Frenemies. When they have the debate, or like when she says, I didn't know Egypt was a real place, or I've never heard of global warmings. Again, I've never heard of global warming. Some iconic Trisha Paytas lines, which begs the question, we really never know how serious Trisha is, because in some ways I do think she's lying. And then in other ways, I do think she's telling the truth. Like, I think she genuinely, at the beginning, didn't understand what gravity was. And, like, to this day, might not fully understand how gravity works in our world. But, like, I've never heard of global warming. I think was for sure a bit. Like, again, I think that she has built this career off rage bait. Truly, like, she knows how to poke the bear of the internet. There is nobody who understands, like, the psyche of, like, what somebody can say to cause a, like, viral conversation arguably better than Trisha Paytas. And sometimes I think it's clear to me that she's, like, doing that on purpose. But it's also, interestingly, somehow always believable. You know, like, if somebody told you that Trisha Paytas genuinely didn't know what global warming was, like, it's sadly within the realm of possibility. You know what I mean? But also, I think that's, like, in some ways, like, I do genuinely think that she is very uneducated about some things like gravity. But then in other ways, I think that she's like more witty than people lead her on, and that she is playing a character in some ways. Not all the time, or at the very least, like hyperbolizing a lot of these aspects of her persona. I also think that this was a really big redemption arc for Trisha, because when they started talking about the Vlog Squad, she placed herself next to a bad guy. So by comparison, she looked like the good guy. And for all intents and purposes, like, in that, specifically in that snow globe of that scenario, she was the good guy. Like, she was literally calling this shit out, I think, like 2 to 3 years before it had ever publicly became this, big, massive fallout on the internet. And, David Dobrik got sued and blah, blah, blah. Like, she was, and she tried. Like, I genuinely think she tried. She had talked about it in videos. She had talked about it with Jason directly. She had talked about it with them directly. She, even in times that it was like beyond her control, you can tell, like, there's literally footage of her, the video of being like, this is ridiculous. Like, I cannot be a part of this. I need to leave right now. And like, in that, wherever she falls on this weird vagueness of a moral compass, like, at least in those situations, there is like video footage, I think, of her having an understanding between right and wrong and choosing to do the right thing. Also, what we saw with this is that podcasting was really the format for Trisha. Like, from frenemies to just Trish, she is an entertainer. Like, something about the way she speaks, the way she moves her hands, the things she talks about, it's like this almost lack of social awareness and like specific social cues is so funny and interesting to consume. Like, she is a great entertainment value. Whatever you think about her, like, she's a very interesting piece of entertainment. Again, then when we circle back to this, like, what is wrong with Trisha, she really hides behind this wall of like mental illness and sometimes even substance abuse in a way that's like really not okay and very toxic. I don't know, like, I think the evolution of Trisha Paytas and now being on SNL is so interesting, because in many ways I think it's cool. I think it's cool that somebody has, had a career on the internet for a long time. And I'm just a proponent of seeing people on the internet win. As somebody who was like raised by YouTube in this era, I like that. I like to see mainstream entertainment, especially when these people were not taken seriously for decades. I always say like any TV show right now would kill for the viewership Jenna Marbles had in like 2014. They would kill for that. Like they would but these people were not taken seriously. So in that aspect, I am excited. And the self-growth aspect, I do think that there's like elements of it there. And I am a big believer that people can change. I really am. But do I think that means that we should write off every single thing she has done in the past? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that if you want to consume Trisha Paytas and enjoy her in the way like I said, she is my one problematic fave. I think we're all allowed to have one. And like, I'm not going to defend it. I enjoy her content. But I also think you need to look at it as like, you're watching fiction. You're watching a TV show. You're watching a reality TV show. That's what it is. It's a reality TV show. Like, it's loosely based off of things happening in real life, but at the end of the day, it's rooted in fiction. And a lot of the things she's doing is like bits and not necessarily always true. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is the evolution of Trisha Paytas. Let me know if there's any eras of her thing that I missed out. I mean, there's so many, dude. Like, so many things she's done on the internet. It's truly insane. And I think that she's an interesting case study too, again, for how this like proponents and factors of virality work. There's very few people who have been able to do it for as long as her. And that's an interesting thing. Whether you love her, whether you hate her, there are many people who have risen and fallen in half the amount of time that she's been on the internet. So with that, thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe. Follow us on Spotify. We're so close to 50K. I love y'all so much. And I'll see you next week.